of any fortifications created by a warlord, or any other structures for that matter. With the lack of any scientific evidence, it seemed to me that I should go back to Glastonbury Abbey and reinvestigate its resourceful monks. During the Middle Ages, Glastonbury was one of the most important Christian sites in the country. The evidence of its wealth and power are all around me. Is it possible that the medieval Christian history of Glastonbury is the key to the mystery of our terraces? Even the ruins give us an idea of the size and wealth of the abbey. Its church would have been bigger than many cathedrals. Glastonbury Abbey was torn down, along with other monasteries in the country, in 1539 by Henry VIII. It seemed to me that the abbey was surely a power in the land and might have been able to transform the local landscape. The records from Glastonbury Abbey are now at Longleat House in Wiltshire. I went there to meet Steve Rippon, a landscape archaeologist.
The Longleat House actually acquired the records of Glastonbury Abbey after the dissolution of the monasteries in the 16th centuries. And it's an amazingly rich archive. This is just a fraction of the records that actually survive.
Do they tell us anything, suggest anything about if they were making those terraces on the Tor?
Well, not as such, but what they do show is just how wealthy the abbey actually was. This is the Valor Ecclesiasticus, a survey commissioned by Henry VIII to assess the wealth of the monasteries, and in the 16th century, Glastonbury was the wealthiest abbey in the country.
And the records also showed how astute the monks were in managing that wealth and the manors on their estates.
These manors were spread quite widely across the landscape. They occupied different types of environment, different types of landscape. And the monks knew to adopt slightly different patterns of farming to suit the different landscapes. And in some places, even completely transforming the landscape to make it more suitable for agriculture. And this is best seen in the Somerset Levels.
The area now known as the Somerset Levels had once been that enormous wetland stretching to the sea, and it seems that it was the monks of Glastonbury who were responsible for draining it. They clearly didn't shrink from major land engineering. On the Levels today, there's a huge network of canals, originally built by the abbey, and still very much in use. Reclaiming the Levels must have required drainage on a heroic scale. Even for a powerful and wealthy abbey, it would have been an ambitious enterprise. So what did Glastonbury Abbey do to bring this land under control and production?
What they actually did was to canalise the major rivers that flow off of the uplands around Glastonbury. And one of those is the River Brew that we actually have here.
Mm-hmm.
So they literally dug this huge artificial canal to take the water quickly and efficiently out to the coast.
It was a colossal amount of work. For the monks, the land reclaimed here would have been valuable, but still liable to occasional flooding. This would make good pasture, but wouldn't have been so good for growing crops.
This area might not have been used for arable-based agriculture, which today we think of as being the most productive way of using the land. But the monks knew very well how to get the most out of these wetland landscapes.
By draining the Levels, the monks created a great deal of good pasture. But they would still have been looking for arable land. Perhaps this was the key. Could the terraces have been created for ploughing? If Glastonbury Abbey could excavate miles of canals and drainage channels, carving terraces along the side of the Tor would surely not have been beyond them. But it would have been a huge labour. Would it have been worthwhile? I wanted to find out more about how hillsides were used for agriculture in the Middle Ages. I drove up to the Mendips, the line of hills to the north of the levels, to meet Somerset County archaeologist Bob Croft. He showed me agricultural terraces which have been carved into the hillside here. This is medieval work here, is it, these terraces we can
Yes,
see?
very clearly. It's linked in with the farmsteads which are scattered along this side of the Mendip edge, all the way along this edge of the Mendips. About every mile or two you come along to the next farm. And linking between them are these series of parallel banks, the lynchets, the medieval strip fields, right up on the side.
Now I could imagine the terraces as the strips of field they were in medieval times. This was obviously a common practice. But I was still surprised that it was worth all the work. I mean, it seems an awful lot of effort. You've got just a little terrace here. It's about 4 or 5 metres wide, and then you have to build this great bank. And up you go, maybe another couple of metres, and then you've just got another narrow strip of land. Well, it scarcely seems worth it when you've got all that land below.
Well, what you're looking for is some good land to grow your beans, your oats and the wheat. And not necessarily going to get that down on the edges, particularly if you get a wet summer, you get wet periods.
I know this wasn't the Abbot of Glastonbury's land, but the Abbey there would have been doing the same sort of work on their hillsides, would they?
Yeah, I think you've got to focus in on that because the growth in population would have meant more labour and the need, therefore, to produce a few more crops. And here, as on the Tor, no doubt they would have used the maximum amount of land available.
And if the terraces on the Tor had also been ploughed, this is how they would have looked. After talking to Bob, I'm convinced that I've found the answer. The terraces were created when the population was growing fast and land was in desperately short supply. Flat strips were carved into the hillsides to make use of every possible scrap of dry land for ploughing. From above, you can see that though the terraces are narrow, the monks would have gained a considerable amount of land overall. Some may be disappointed that the terraces were not created in Neolithic times or by King Arthur or a local warlord, but I think it was the monks of Glastonbury Abbey again. I can see that they were equally adept at manipulating the physical and the mythical landscapes. It's nearly 500 years since the Abbey was a power in the land, but even today the dead monks have not released their grip on Glastonbury. I came here to try to unravel two mysteries. First, the origin of these terraces on the Tor, and secondly, why this part of Britain has become the centre of such a swirling tangle of myth and legend. It seems probable that the medieval monks were responsible for both. They transformed the physical surroundings to produce the landscape which we see now, and they also created a mythical landscape which still endures. In fact, the myth-making tradition which they started continues and flourishes even today. For a free guide to the series and details of all other Open University programmes, call 0870 900 7788 or visit our website at open2.net.